Bienvenidos, worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. I'm In Fuego here, back for Enfuegotainment, my namesake program, and a Rapido Fuego review. First one that I have done in a hot minute. Took some time off and just recalibrating some things here as we are beginning the month of March. I just recently did my thoughts on the Golden Globes and also some of my favorite films from the previous year. But today we are talking the first new big Disney release that is available both in theaters but also at home. So Raya and The Last Dragon is basically following the same release structure as Moana did last year. So still in the midst of the Pandisi and everything, so they are giving you the option to either go to a theater and see it, which is what I did. Very few people in there, you know, nice and distanced and masked up and all that good stuff. But you can also spend the $29.99 to order it through Disney Plus if you so desire. But for somebody who's seeing it individually like me, it made much more sense to just go to a matinee at the theater and stuff. And so, yeah, thoughts on this film. I gotta say, you have to keep in mind that there are two different like Disney 3D animation studios. There is Walt Disney Animation, which obviously did all of the 2D stuff for decades upon decades, including stuff as far back as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs to, you know, Robin Hood, Alice in Wonderland, Pinocchio, and then later stuff like Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, and even more recent stuff like The Princess and the Frog. I believe that was their last 2D animated foray. But basically, they have been doing 3D animation stuff primarily, like pretty much entirely since Princess and the Frog. So stuff like Big Hero 6 and Zootopia, which I really enjoyed. The two Frozen movies, which I was a little more ho-hum on. Obviously, also the two Wreck-It Ralph films. Moana was really good. But in a lot of ways, the 3D animation of Walt Disney Animated Studios proper, it's kind of like the little brother in a lot of ways to Pixar. And we know that Pixar was originally a part of Disney, then they briefly broke away, and they've been back under the Disney umbrella for a while, but it's really tough to compare the consistent quality, with the exception of a few things here and there, from Pixar, but really their track record is practically stainless, aside from maybe like you know, some of the Cars stuff and the Monsters Inc. sequel, and some may disagree with me about that one, or I guess it was a prequel, Monster University. But in any event, like 95% of what Pixar has put out, whether WALL-E or Up or you know, obviously the four Toy Story films and you know, various others, and most recently Soul and Onward from the previous year, 2020, both of which I adored for vastly different reasons because they are entirely different sorts of films. So it's impossible not to compare this film to the Pixar output. And unfortunately, if you do that, in my estimation, it kind of pales in comparison. Not really based on the animation quality, which is breathtaking in Raya and The Last Dragon, and I also dig this kind of feudal Far East sort of setting, and you know, mythical dragons, and you know, just the universe, well, not the universe, but you know, the entire world in peril. And so there is a lot that I enjoyed about this, and the beautiful locales that we have in this, and you know, the voice acting for the most part is good. You know, you've got Kelly Marie Tran as Raya. You also have Awkwafina as Sisu, I believe, Sisu, I think her name was, which is The Last Dragon, aforementioned in the title and stuff like that. Benedict Wong is great in a supporting role, but I kind of found this story a little bit lacking at times. So just to give a little taste of it without spoiling things proper. So apparently 500 years before we basically meet our lead character Raya in this story, and she is young when we initially meet her, much younger than you see in the trailers, where she's, you know, 6 years have gone by and she's, you know, like a young adult by that particular point. But when we first meet Raya, we get a little bit of history just right before about the fact that there was this, there used to be an immense amount of magic in the world, and it was dispersed by these dragons. There was harmony amongst all of the people, and then there was basically the world was saved by this last dragon that also had 4 siblings, which is our Sisu, and after the world was saved, basically, they thought that she was gone forever. Turns out that is not entirely the case, as you would probably imagine from the fact that we have the title, including The Last Dragon. But the world ends up splintering off because the magic from that last dragon and her siblings was distilled into this jewel that is being protected by Raya and her father. And but by that point, post the world being saved and all dragons having been turned into stone except for Sisu, who disappeared and was presumably dead, the world has kind of splintered off. And so the same dark magic or pestilent force that turned all of the dragons into stone still kind of lingers around, and water dispels it for whatever reason. But there is danger kind of waiting in the wings, and that distilled jewel of dragon magic is kind of what helps to keep it at bay. But it is still kind of lurking around out there, and in the wake of the world being saved, all of the humans in this particular region that used to be unified by the dragons have splintered off into 5 separate factions. So you have, I'm trying to remember them all. You have Heart, you have Fang, you have Spine, you have Tail, and then Talon, I believe, if I recall all of them correctly. So you essentially have 5 different kingdoms. They're all distinctively different. And Raya's father, at the beginning of the film, he is adamant about having this renewed companionship, camaraderie, and peace, and having everybody come together and reunify and have one just harmonious nation. So he invites the tribal leaders of the 4 other surrounding kingdoms. He's trying to bring everyone together. There is a bit of treachery and magic. The evil magic, as I mentioned, basically stews through, turns a bunch of people into stone, including one particular important character without spoiling stuff. But that's when we fast forward 6 years into the future, and that magical dragon jewel was broken into pieces, and each of the surrounding kingdoms basically have acquired a piece of it. And that's where our lead Raya, she's going through one of the kingdoms, this one in the desert, and she is kind of trying to track down these despondent pieces, and she hopes to resurrect aforementioned last dragon, which in turn she does, and that's when it turns into, at times, a silly romp. And that's some of my malo. So I've mentioned the bueno being the fact that I love the animation, the different locales and stuff like that. And I also did... The structuring was simplistic in the fact that it felt like a video game. It's like, okay, we've got the first piece from the desert, and now we have to go and find the other 4 bosses in these other levels, one of which is like, almost like a Venice, like a water type of town. And then there's another, which is like the main area of that particular kingdom. And then there's another one that is like that beautiful, like, forest green with mountains surrounding it, and there's protective canals around. We see that later on. Then there is another one that is like almost like snow covered, like in the woods, like wooden fort sort of place. So that there's basically just like one stop after another as Raya and her growing kind of quartet or group of peeps along with her, which eventually includes Benedict Wong's character, who is this big brutish dude who has some very funny moments. Probably my favorite character, and there is a cute kid who's like a sailor, and he's a cook, and he keeps making them all these shrimp dishes and stuff like that. But the ones that steal the show are the cutest, as you would probably imagine. And it's this little, like, pickpocket con artist little baby girl, and she has these 3 white monkeys with her, and they're like this grifter gang. They trick Raya at one particular point. It's a very amusing chase situation, and that's another thing. The action is very thrilling in this, and incredibly well. I mean, it still has to be choreographed. All of the fights and the movements and everything, even if it's not mocap or real people or anything like that. Just the nimble movement of the camera, especially during a few chase sequences, and in particular the one with the babies and the monkeys, which is really great. And there's a few other stuff. Just the movement of our perspective is just a delight. It really shows just how lush and realized all of these environments are that we encounter over the course of it. So that's obviously a feat for the animators, and props to them as another bueno for the fact that they made a beautiful looking movie with a vast variety of different levels and locales and stuff like that. And that's, once again, as I said, where it feels like a video game, where you've got to go, got to find the boss, got to steal this piece of, or acquire this piece of the Broken Dragon Crystal, with hopes of eventually unifying all of them and bringing back all of these people who have been turned into stone, just like Sisu's other 4 dragon siblings. And so that's where I get into some malo, some bad, and the fact that, yeah, it does get relatively repetitive, unfortunately. And also, a lot of the humor and a lot of the dialogue just did not work for me. Pixar has this knack for having dialogue that doesn't, like, it's more, I guess, just multi-appealing, perhaps, you know? It doesn't feel like it's deliberately dumbed down for children, and at times, some of the examples that are made about, like, a classmate, you know, who is working on a project and doesn't really pull their weight, and then, you know, they still get the same grade, or some of the terminology that's, you know, dragon nerding and stuff like that, like, all of the dialogue did not feel period specific, which the film adamantly attempts to be. It's very modern, and a lot of the humor, especially a lot of Awkwafina's dialogue, and I dig her, man. You know, I mean, just about everything comedic that I've seen her in, and also The Farewell, I believe it was, which was the Chinese-American film that she did. She was tremendous in that movie. So I know that she has acting chops both from a dramatic slant and from a, you know, just the angle of comedic as well. But a lot of the dialogue and a lot of her lines just didn't work for me, and I did not chuckle anywhere near as much as the silly antics of the baby and her three monkeys, or even some of the quips from Benedict Wong. So that was where the real humor lay, and then it's also relatively predictable. I mean, perhaps not for a younger child, but in that regard, yeah, a lot of the humor didn't land. It was a little repetitive as far as just beat after beat of kind of the same thing, and also the predictability factor, the essence of stakes that is supposedly there didn't really, I mean, yeah, I just didn't personally feel it. Perhaps, you know, since this does feel much more geared towards children than something like Soul, for instance, or even Onward, or, you know, lots of other Pixar stuff, you know. This one just wasn't, it wasn't really good, but it was solid, you know. It's definitely not going to be any sort of instant classic as far as, and I'm wondering what the children's response to it is going to be also, because of the fact that it's listed as a near 2-hour runtime. Like, I left when the credits started, so it was nowhere near that length, but near the end of the film, I saw, because, you know, the only people besides me, there was a couple other, you know, older adults there, not old, but you know what I mean, and the rest was parents with kids. And I saw in the last like 15-20 minutes or so of the film, the kids were starting to get restless, and so for that reason, maybe they could have trimmed the runtime down just a wee bit. And then also, lastly, without spoiling, there's some stuff with regards to the finale and the return of certain characters when nothing seems different than at the beginning of the film as far as the state of this dragon jewel itself, and yet certain things, characters are back. I kind of scratched my head a little bit because I didn't personally feel like there was an adequate explanation given for that. But as a whole, I will most definitely say that if I'm going to give it a final ranking here in this rapid review, Rapido, this is a 3 out of 5 Fuego Fireballs. This is definitely a bueno movie, and I would definitely recommend it, but I do feel like it will be a little bit more appealing towards the younger, more frozen contingent in comparison with just, you know, the mass appeal that you get from the predominance of the Pixar output. So, I extend the grande gracias, I've been Jaime En Fuego, and you can find moi on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube. A like, a share, a subscribe, porfa y gracias is greatly appreciated. If you like spooktacular stuff, jump over to youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. That is the main digs where we put out a new episode every single day. And yes, any sort of patronage over there is greatly appreciated. So, I'm En Fuego, y'all have been rad status, and until the real of Kyle comes around once more, hasta luego, cinemigos, constant viewers, say thank you for a bit of your time today, and I hope we share more of this film palaver sooner rather than later. Adios.